As we progress outward in the project from the radiator section, what I notice here on the rear hood is we have this section here by the exhaust, by the turbo, and except for a little opening on the door that's not replicated on the U33 shells, it's pretty faithful. Then when we get to the engine compartment, there are only 6 doors. This is because this locomotive used a 12-cylinder prime mover instead of the 16-cylinder. So my engine compartment has too many doors. So I'm now faced with the prospect of removing 2 doors. I can do this by taking off the 2 end doors, which is just 2 cuts, one here and one here. But if I want to retain the hinge arrangement, I'm going to have to take out one of these middle doors, and that means I have 4 cuts. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't want to do 4 cuts all the way through this shell. The next issue that we see is that on the forward hood section, the engine doors are much shorter because of this battery compartment. I don't even know what I'm going to do with those. I'll probably have to start looking at salvaging these shorter doors over here. So let's start with the rear hood. I need to remove 1 door from this section of 4 and 1 door from this section of 4. What I've decided to do is I'm going to sand off the doors on the master shell. I'm going to harvest doors from the donor shell. I have these 3/4 height doors here that I'll be using for the front hood engine compartment. And then I have these doors, the full height doors, that I'll be using for the rear hood engine compartment. I'll sand them down to their very thin profiles, then I'll carve out a door. I'll put the door sections back together and then lay the door sections onto the master, as we did here for these vented doors on the radiator section. In order to make sanding the compartment doors off easier, I'm going to have to remove the walkways. I elected to sand down the thickness of the walkways until they were just wafer thin, and then they would peel off the bottom of the shell. This helped me by leveling the shells that I had joined end to end. I then masked off the features I wanted to retain on the master shell and sanded off the engine doors. Up to this point, my shell has been bi-directional. It doesn't have a front or a back. As we look at the plans, we can see that the 6 engine access doors on the rear hood are tall, and the 6 engine access doors on the front hood are short. So now I have to give a front and a rear to my shell. I have taken the door details off of the donor shells and sanded them wafer thin. These are now going to get glued into place on the shells. So I have these 8 long hood doors and I have several short doors. I can't quite keep the hinge and latch orientation the same, but I'm going to make some compromises. I'm going to cut mine out on this center support with hinges and then just move out 3 doors. I'll be missing some hinges on this outside door. I think I can just live with that. So these will get trimmed to size and then glued in place on the shell. the short doors will go over here on the opposite side. So that's the next step. As I continue the work on my Athearn Blue Box Kit Bash U50C, I'm now at a point where I need to start working over the compartment doors over the DC generator at the rear hood and at the front hood. The difficulty is that I now need doors that are about 20 millimeters tall and about 18 millimeters tall, but none of the salvage stuff I have from the previous U30 B or C shells really matches. So I'm looking through my scrap box and I came across this AHM U20 or C424, and it turns out that these doors are 18 millimeters and these doors are 20 millimeters. They're almost the right shape. They're a little longer than what I measure here on the drawing, but again, this is my locomotive. So I'm going to go ahead and salvage these 18 millimeter and 20 millimeter doors off this AHM C424 shell. Photo shows the difference in thickness of the salvaged compartment door from the AHM C424 before and after sanding. This photo shows the salvaged doors glued to the master shell. It also shows the shortening of the master shell on the B end of the locomotive. This photo shows a salvaged hood B end glued to the B end of the master shell. I used a palm sander to sand down the thickness of some of the salvaged doors. It generated a little bit of heat and drew some of the adhesive up from the masking tape I was using to hold it in place. I found that I could remove this using paint remover. The number board and headlight for the B end of the U50C were salvaged from a U33B cab. The number board was sanded on a curved form to match the contour of the U50C B end bulkhead. The number boards were held in place with rubber bands while the cement dried. This photo shows the B end of the U50C shell. This brings us to the end of the shell hood kit bash for my U50C. Join me soon for continued work on the cab and walkways, and thanks for watching.